Welcome to the Popcorn Talk Network, for the online broadcast network that features movie discussion, news, and interviews. Press 1. Popcorn Talk. We talk movies.
I'm opening. We have an eye, sort of a nostril, 2 teeth. One of the teeth has a small cavity. Close call, folks, but I think we got here just in time.
Presented by Maria Menounos and Kevin Undergaro. This is Anatomy of a Movie. In-depth discussions and breakdowns of various movie titles. And now that you've seen the movie, let the dissection begin.
Well, hello, movie fans. How are you today? My name is Demetri Panos, and we are going from Anatomy of a Movie as part of the Popcorn Talk Network, where all we do is talk about movies 24/7. And here at Anatomy of a Movie, we do something even better. I think it's even great and fun. We talk about movies the way you want to talk about movies. Like, you go out with your friends, you see a movie, then you go to a bar after, and you, as movie fans, you just dissect the movie, and that's the type of feeling we like to try to have here at Anatomy of a Movie, where today we are breaking down the sequel, not a sequel, but it's a sequel, to Cloverfield, and we are going to visit 10 Cloverfield Lane. Everybody, please say hello to my great host, to my right, Marisa Serafini.
Hello, everyone. You can follow me on Twitter at Serafini TV. Yes, hello, Demetri.
How are you?
Good.
You know, going into 10 Cloverfield Lane, this was sort of... I was like, wow, okay, so here's the sequel to 10 Cloverfield Lane, and it looks nothing like Cloverfield, and I was hooked. I was in, and I couldn't wait. I saw it, and... You know, for me, it's not your typical sequel. I loved it. I thought it was an excellent science fiction psychological thriller. Complete departure from the original Cloverfield, which in essence is a monster Godzilla type of movie. Yeah. Done very well. And, Mary Elizabeth Winstead, I'm a really huge fan of.
I've always liked her work.
Yeah, and I think, again, she is fantastic in this movie. I think it's another excellent performance by her. When I see her in movies like this and even The Thing, she always reminds me of Sigourney Weaver in movies like Aliens, and Avatar, meaning that Sigourney's characters and the way in which she performs, like Ripley, say, they're always strong, smart, determined, yet at the same time, she's very sympathetic.
Vulnerable at sometimes.
Vulnerable, but yet she can be triumphant. And Mary Elizabeth Winstead, the way she takes on these types of characters, particularly in 10 Cloverfield Lane, very similar, and I respect that. I love that. And the other thing that I think Winstead does too is she helps elevate the genre, much like Sigourney Weaver. She can elevate that genre of science fiction. She makes it approachable for everybody, and I think that's fantastic. John Goodman, of course, I think he's scary good, in this movie. The third person, whose name...
John Gallagher Jr.
John Gallagher Jr., too, is, he plays very well. He does a very good job. I mean, this is basically Room on steroids, when you think about this.
Yeah.
This is a movie that kept me guessing. And that's something that's not always associated with a sequel. Like, it's, to come up with something fresh and original... this takes place in the Cloverfield universe. I really, walking out of this movie, I was like, wow, what a very well done thriller this was. So.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about development of this movie. We're going to break down all aspects. One of the cool things that we found, there's a great website which I'll share with you that breaks down the original script, because this was not always called 10 Cloverfield Lane.
No.
It actually went from a movie called The Cellar to Valencia
They filmed it as Valencia as the code name. Yeah.
And then we got 10 Cloverfield Lane. And how does this tie into Cloverfield? We'll talk about that too. But why don't we start off with a little bit of development of how this project got off the ground and all that fun stuff.
Yeah, so J.J. Abrams had the spec script, The Cellar, and Bad Robot acquired it, that, his production company, a few years ago. And they had the producer, Damien Chazelle, who actually was, and we'll get into that too, but he was the original director for this film, which I thought was interesting. And he actually left to go do Whiplash instead. Good choice for him.
And
that was a great Academy Award winning kind of movie as well. But I think it was just interesting how it went from a spec script to something where JJ always had in the back of his mind he wanted to do some type of blood relative type of movie for the first Cloverfield.
Right.
And while they were, writing the script, and they're like, there are some elements that could be related to Cloverfield. And sure enough, they made the decision to tie it to Cloverfield.
Right, and those writers too, Josh Campbell, Matthew Stoichen, who wrote The Cellar,
mm-hmm.
and then even Damien Chazelle came in a little bit and did some work on it. I too find it very fascinating that he's on this project, Damien Chazelle, and then his short of Whiplash gets picked up.
Yeah.
And JJ, to his credit, you can't. He's like, what, dude. That was your baby. I like that foresight, but I also enjoy the fact too that they went to another, for lack of better words, an unseasoned, like a first-time feature film director, this Dan Trachtenberg guy. So I enjoyed how they went into that and how he got hired to come on to
be a part of
carry
this.
the torch and be part of this universe, because I think he did a really extremely capable job.
I think so too. And watching this film, you would never really think this was his first big film debut, because it was just so well done as a thriller, as a film. Overall, we'll get into it, but like the pacing and whatnot, it was just such a high production film. You would never think it was from someone this was his first time.
Yeah, and you know what else? Like, it wasn't like a high production film. This
is a well quality production.
Very
film.
Well quality. It even it harkens like independent film, because literally we are talking about, for the most part, 90% of this movie takes place in this one set.
The bunker.
This bunker. And it's, like I said, I call it Room, but it's a 3-character play, in a sense. So your budget, it really helps your budget, which is estimated around $15 million or so, which, again,
fairly low compared to the first one.
Of course. And it's a sequel. And I think what they were able to do with that budget, with their set, be creative. Let's we want, production design and lighting and cinematography. You had to be creative to get a sense of, and sometimes claustrophobia. It's sometimes
the sound design.
Sound design.
And I think that's also with the testament to just the writing and the story. It was a fairly simple story that goes along with a simple budget.
Yeah, absolutely. So, we always talk about the collaborative effort, and this is a movie that really relies on the collaborative effort clicking. Everybody worked really well together on the means that they had. Everybody was on board for this movie. And what's funny is they didn't necessarily know they were making a Cloverfield movie while they were filming it. In fact, some people didn't realize until the trailer came out in January. It's like, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
John Goodman, Mary Elizabeth Winstead.
They pretty much realized they were in a Cloverfield movie like the rest of the world, and I like that, because when they were actually filming a lot of their interviews, they said that the scripts that they received, they were watermarked, and even like some of the producers and whatnot, when they had to get, like, say they were sent online links, it would the script would like self-destruct afterwards.
Right.
So it was very tight-lipped and kept very secret for just the production. So it makes sense that the the cast still didn't really know what they were part of.
Which is great because it makes me wonder, like, do you go out to your cast and go, hey, would you like to be in the sequel to Cloverfield? Nah, I don't want to. Hey, would you like to be in this movie? Oh, this is a great script. Yeah, I want to be a part of it. And then you tell them after they're done and they got paid, oh, by the way, this is a sequel to Cloverfield. What? So I just find that whole aspect of keeping this secretive. And let's face it, J.J. Abrams, he's sort of kind of become a pro at keeping things secret, whether it be producing Lost, Star Wars. I think they did a really great job in keeping a tight lid on a lot of things. And in Cloverfield, this is great. It's like, hey, I'm over here doing Star Wars. People really weren't paying attention to a sequel for Cloverfield so much. So it sort of snuck in there.
And even Dan Trachtenberg, he said himself that, because a lot of people asked him, like, how do you keep this so secret? And he's like, the easy thing was you just don't talk about it. Because and he did say, being this was his first big debut, he was so excited because it was his first big movie, but he couldn't talk about it because it was so secret. And he's like, it was torture. And I was like, I can understand that. I can understand the frustration. But apparently they all did their job as well and didn't talk about it. Yeah, no,
I think that the whole secretiveness of this movie, the marketing that they did, we'll get into, I think was very smart. And I really enjoyed, when we talk about the writing of this movie, I want to get to it in a bit because there are very stark differences between what was written on script and then catering this movie to be in the Cloverfield universe. There are stark differences between, and we'll talk about breakdown between character, plotting, and the end. The end has led to a lot of debate between people,
a lot of theories too.
A lot of theories, and how it came out earlier this week that this wasn't the original. What was shot and on film was not the original ending of the movie. So we're going to talk about that. But before we do, I do want to talk about a little bit about production design. I want to talk about how this movie was filmed because I find this to be all fascinating as well. One of the things that I learned in researching, this movie was shot chronologically.
Yeah, for the most part, it was chronologically. They did say there were some scenes that they had to film out of order just because of, production value. And if you've seen the movie, and I assume you have because you're listening to us, but I mean, it very rarely do films ever get shot in chronological order. And Mary Elizabeth Winstead said that that while filming it chronologically helped the actors and John Gallagher helped the actors to stay in character and stay in the same mindset throughout the whole filming.
Yeah, and the tension can develop as this movie goes because in a sense this movie too is a potboiler. Things start off and things build and build and build. There are some twists and turns as we go along and you're really on the edge of your seat. If you enjoy this sort of thing like I do, like trying to figure things out. And I think by the chronologically, filming it in that order helps for that. They also were given a lot of rehearsal time. They had about 2 weeks of rehearsal time, which even John Goodman himself and Maria Elizabeth Winstead, they said they've never been given so much time to rehearse, but it helped them out so much. Number one, I think with chemistry, because I think there was a great chemistry between our threesome, so to speak.
Yeah, and I think for a movie that only has essentially 3 people in it, I was still engaged with all 3 of them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, too, the other thing that helped chronologically is this bunker. This bunker was built...
It's a life-size bunker.
Yeah, by Ramsey Avery was the production designer, and he said he looked at actual, underground atomic bomb shelters and stuff. He said he went on to say that if the NSA actually were to look at his internet website hits, he'd probably be in trouble because of what he was looking up to design this bunker. But it truly was a true to life, fit to scale kind of a set, removable walls. So that they can get certain scenes.
And that also went into the rehearsal time, too. Right. So because they are in such a tight-knit space, that the they took that time to actually figure out where to move the cameras within such a confined area.
Right. Yeah, and I found that really cool. I also find that there's there's a little bit of John McClane-ish, going through air ducts where we have Mary Elizabeth Winstead.
I was afraid for her life.
Yeah, it was very claustrophobic. And again, if you want, like, she also, little Easter egg here, she plays John McClane's daughter in Live Free, Die Hard.
Yeah, she
and
does.
in Die Hard Another Day. So, I was expecting her to pull out a lighter and say, come out to the West Coast, have a few laughs. And
Yippee-ki-yay.
Yeah. But what's funny about how they designed this is they designed it to her frame and made it tighter for her.
She's a fairly small person too, so.
I really, you really got a sense that everything was mapped out for them from production designer. I thought he did a really great job. And then add to that, you had Jeff Cutter doing the cinematography on this, in which you had to light things the way things were shot, both the exterior as well as interior, because you had to give this ominous feeling on the outside world.
I loved the lighting. You brought up lighting, that because we are in essentially one location, the bunker, but I liked the lighting because it would change.
Right.
There were some days it was nice and warm, like this
Right.
current photo that we're seeing up on our screens. If you're listening on iTunes, definitely check out the video. It was nice and warm.
Familial, like a
Orange.
family setting, right?
Yeah, and it felt welcoming and
Right.
and warmth.
Safe,
And
too.
then, safe.
Yeah.
And then it would switch, throughout the film, you see it turning gray, and then you see it turning blue, and it's the same location, too. So, like, even the atmosphere changed just
Sure.
in emotional tone.
Absolutely. And, of course, one of the things that I thought was very clever is the how this movie opens, okay? Where
I liked the opening.
The opening is fantastic, I thought, because we're introduced to Michelle, like, straight on. She's on the phone. We're not hearing conversation, really. But we know that something not so good is going down. And she leaves and gets into her car. And there's very little sound or dialogue sound being used.
There's really no speaking from her.
Right.
All the sounds that we're hearing is the music score underneath.
Right.
The sounds of the atmosphere and environmental sounds, and like the diegetic sounds.
Yeah,
really.
and
Diegetic.
and the outside sounds really don't come into play until she leaves. She leaves the gas station, in a sense, where she
This
goes
was about
into
like
the car.
a good 5-7 minutes into the movie already, with
No
no
credits yet
talking.
either.
Yeah,
No.
no talking.
Yeah, and again, the way that it looked, and then it happens. Car crash,
Car.
and then we get credits, and it's like and then there was unease. I mean, she's having an argument with somebody on the phone. We can tell it's not a good argument. She leaves. Not feeling, she's running from something. She's running away. She's getting her car, going to the countryside. She stops at a gas station, right? And there's unease at the gas station. Somebody else pulls into the gas station, and she's looking over her shoulder. It's just not your typical visit to the pumps. And so that unease is already starting to settle in, and she gets into her car. She gets onto the phone, and this is like the first time we're hearing dialogue.
Yeah, actual speaking.
Yeah, with Bradley Cooper.
Which was
right?
funny. But I found it interesting that the first speaking dialogue is from technology, not from a human.
Right.
So
Absolutely.
it
That's
just shows
interesting.
like just how already disconnected she is from this world that she's already in.
Right.
And about to be even more disconnected later
Right.
on.
Yeah, and then, boom, we get this car crash spinning around.
That was scary.
It was a scary car crash.
With all the television shows and and movies that we see, and we've seen probably 1.5 million car crashes over and over again, but this was actually literally out of nowhere, and because it was just sound.
It was
That's
sound.
all
Yep.
we saw. It was
Yep.
like and heard. We saw the crash and then sound. That was it.
Yeah, and what I liked about this car crash too, because it's sort of expanded on a technique that I think has just become cliche a lot, where where you're in the car and the camera is seated in the passenger side showing
yeah.
the driver's profile, and they're going down the street, and then out of nowhere comes the Big Mac truck and hits the thing. This has been done in movies. This has been done in TV ad nauseum. This one's a little bit different. It's sort of like it's the same philosophy, so to speak, but it's just filmed differently. And the spin out and her toppling down into, like, say, the ditch, I think that was great. And then the credits happen.
Yeah, I think also the perspective was slightly different because you saw it in the side view mirror first before the side view.
Yeah.
And because when you see someone always, and when we were driving, I mean, we drive in LA where it's kind of already scary every single day. But when you see someone behind you already speeding up and you think they're going to hit you, and then they actually do, that's even a little bit more scary.
Yeah, and what's really cool too about the car crash is this leads to a little bit of mystery, because those pieces in dreams and flashbacks start to come back to our character of Michelle, because everything happens so fast, and she's starting to piece together a couple of things. And I really like the use of that opening scene where she pieces together, like,
Gas station.
Gas station, which, by the way, is another Easter egg. It was named Kelvin Gas, which was also in Super 8. It's also the word Kelvin. It's the USS Kelvin was in Star Trek, the motion picture. Another J.J. Abrams, Super 8, J.J. Abrams.
So Kelvin has a meaning.
Kelvin has a meaning. Kelvin was even mentioned in Star Wars The Force Awakens. It was a point, I believe, on the planet of Jakku. Kelvin, why? Because this is J.J. Abrams. It's the last name of his maternal grandfather, I believe. And it's his last name, Kelvin, and he likes to put the name into his movies. I think that's pretty cool. As soon as I saw Kelvin Gas, I said, oh, there it is. That's great. And he didn't even direct this movie, but it was a nice...
But he did
homage.
produce it.
Yeah,
so.
I did like that. So that was fun. But going back to that crash, it wasn't just a crash that sets our character up. It's a crash in which, as she begins to come to and think about the crash, it leads to a bigger expanding of the mystery of why she is in the situation that she ends up in, which is handcuffed in a cellar with IV bag in a cellar room. And we talk about lighting. You know, it's pretty gray.
I think the cinematography, just that overhead shot of her looking down while she's trying to she's on her cell phone and trying to get reception. I thought that was a great shot because it already showed that, like, there's something more scary above her than at her actual level below, underneath everything. I think that was brilliantly shot. And watching this, her struggle and, like, using the environment that she was in with the only, say, X, Y, and Z objects. It reminded me of just that game where you're only given so many objects and you have to put them together to try to escape.
Yeah.
It felt like that. And I liked it because it showed her character development, that she is a smart person. She's very innovative.
She's resourceful.
Very resourceful. She can use things around her and, like, make do and make a weapon, and actually she's very smart. So
I agree.
Which I think that was good foreshadowing what we'll see later on in the movie, that, you know, she's resourceful. She can use things around her.
Yeah, and again, we'll talk about it. I want to get through these things first, like production design and cinematography, which you're right. But what's great about she is resourceful, and you'll see when we talk about breakdown of character. Originally, not so much, which again I find fascinating. So, but yes, cinematography. I thought was really, really used very well. Jeff Cutter did a fine job in doing this. So,
he did.
Yeah. So I really enjoyed how this movie looked and what they were able to accomplish on the budget that they had. And again, the exterior shots, when we go outside of the house, you know, how it really did look ominous. And there was a great scene, again, with lightning towards the end of the movie. You know, the scene that I'm talking to, and we see these shadows in the clouds. You know, very well done.
Something's there.
Yeah, something's there.
Something's coming.
Yeah, something ominous, not great. It was, you can't take away. And again, too, when you're talking about production design, cinematography, they were looking at movies like The Hunt for Red October, you know, which is very claustrophobic. And how is this shot? And you can tell they used it to a plum over here. So I really like that a lot. And another fun thing about this movie too was, I think, was the score by Bear McCreary. I think he set up a very unsettling type of but a good score. This is a guy who...
He's actually known for more television.
Absolutely.
And to cross over into the film, his career is only going up and up from here.
Yeah, and you may have heard of things like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. or maybe The Walking Dead. He did the Sarah Connor Chronicles, Terminator, Outlander. Yeah, you're right. And for him to be attached and to come on board to do this, I think is fantastic. And I love the fact that he went sort of kind of big. He went with the attitude of, okay, I get it. It's a small, let's call it independent type of a budgeted movie. Mm-hmm. But he went full orchestral, 45-piece string ensemble.
Yeah.
It was a 90-piece
orchestra. It's crazy.
And I find that I like that mindset. And I like this fact that as a television composer, he uses orchestra, because back in the 60s and stuff, that's how they used to score. When you think of some great scores between Mission Impossible and even Star Trek, they all used orchestra. And I like how him coming from TV and stepping up, his score gave this small movie a big, good sound that didn't hamper or take away from what's going on screen.
I definitely noticed the music in this film. I noticed it in the first 10 minutes where it was really prevalent, and there was no speaking dialogue. So, and then obviously throughout, when motions and scenes got tension,
right,
you felt it. And I think he did such a great job because he really wanted to hone in on the idea of claustrophobia.
Right.
So, and the subterranean kind of feel. And he actually, for one of the instruments he used was the blaster beam.
I was just going to ask you about that, the blaster beam.
Which is interesting about this research, that because he took around, the bear took around a walk in the bunker, and he realized just like how his voice was echoing in such small, tight spaces, so he really wanted that blow feel. And so he used this blaster beam, which he describes and is essentially a 15-long steel guitar, and that would give the feel that you're deep under earth. But the interesting thing about the blaster, the lowest note on a piano is actually only like the mid key of a blaster beam. So the blaster beam can go even lower than that. So he went in as low as possible.
Right.
And just the detail he went into, like the low kind of weird sounds that you would never think of.
Yeah.
Like he really, really elevated that.
Yeah, I think so too. I think fine job on this movie. And again, it helps elevate the movie. Mm-hmm. It doesn't distract from the movie. I agree with you. And the blaster beam is like really cool. Since we're talking about sound too, you got to think about, okay, what sound do we have when we're basically in a bunker, right? But there's a lot of sound.
Scary
steel door that scared everybody on set.
Oh my goodness, yeah. Every time, I think the first time we heard that I was scared like crapless. Yeah. And but every time we heard it over and over again, it got somewhat more scary.
Yeah, it became louder. And the last time I can remember of a scary steel door sound was from like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the original one, in which Leatherface abducts a girl, like she's on the porch running away, takes her, and then he slams this steel door shut. This door had a gravitas.
It did, and it had like,
it's almost like a character.
It was slightly a different sound every time, but it sounded so scary when you lift the handle and push it open. And you're just like, oh, something scary is going through that door.
Yeah, and again, the gentleman Will Files, who's doing the sound design.
He was the sound mixer.
And we knew the sound design was. He's quoted as saying, "We knew the sound design was going to be essential for this movie." I was really excited about us getting really creative with it, and I even sort of brought up the Evil Dead movies' incredibly creative sound design. It's not totally literal, and I thought that would be really cool for us to have too. And talking about the door, that was the scariest sounding thing on set. And every time...
Scariest sounding thing in the film.
Yeah, and every time it would close, it would jolt us into surprise. And what's funny is I think a lot of that sound worked its way into the sound design. They actually used a lot of production sound. In one mix, they actually... Okay, this I found funny. In one mix, they actually changed the sound of the door. And J.J. Abrams, who was watching this, is like, well, wait, what happened? And they're like, what? He goes, the sound of the door. It sounds like a woman screaming sometimes. Guys, you got to put that sound back in. So that's number one. It's great that J.J. Abrams is that involved and pays attention to such detail. But if it affects him in a way, and he says, hey, what happened to the door? No, you got to go back. I think that's great.
That's fantastic. That door was scary as shite.
And everything else, too, when you think about the sound design from inside the bunker to outside the bunker to the way the alien sounds to the way the car crash sounded.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And also, what I found interesting was when they were mixing this, they actually had a couple sound mixes for the theaters of the Dolby Atmos. Right. Which is like all about the sound. The 128 track sound system, where for that particular mix, they actually used the ceiling speakers, and that's where they had fun with the sound above their ground. Right. And there is a photo here that like they purposely made sounds above sound really, really scary. Yeah. And like the off-screen kind of sounds like it allows the audience to just imagine what's really there, right. Which is also more fun while watching. Yeah.
So, and as I'm looking at my notes, I have to put in a correction that where I was quoting actually came from director Dan Trachtenberg, who was talking about the sound design and what he wanted to accomplish, along with the sound designer. So just because one great thing, too, that we are incorporating into the show is after the show is done, not only do we encourage your comments, but we put our comments up online for the world to see, so that maybe you want to get a little bit deeper, because we will do our research, and we're going to share our research notes with you, so that you too can have a much deeper experience if you elect to choose to do so. I always find it fun when I research movies, especially like a 10 Cloverfield Lane, because it's, to do a big movie, there's so much stuff out there, but when you're doing a small movie, that falls within the genre of science fiction, I always like to see the creativity. So you will get to see all this once we're done. We post it, and you'll get to download it. I believe it's in a zip file. So, you would read that, that was a Dan Trachtenberg interview, not a the sound designer, so I want to correct myself there. So, let's see. Do we want to talk? I want to talk about, let's talk about performances. Before we go into marketing, I want to talk about this cast because we're basically three people.
Yeah, basically three people. I liked how that they can have such a intriguing story and intriguing relationships with so many or like less people. I guess you can say. Right. I mean, we can get sucked into the films that have a big ensemble of 20 people, and you won't really remember who they are. Sure. But I think that's what they did so well in this film, that because there's literally a handful of people, you can remember each of them individually, and they all played their part.
Absolutely. And not only did the way in which this was written, too, they played their part so well that it lends to the guesswork for the audience. And they float the hints out there, the characters do, and you sort of kind of piecing together, like Emmett, okay? John Gallagher Jr., his character has a broken arm.
Already a weakness.
And when we first see him, we don't know who he is, and we don't know if he's good or bad. Same goes with John Goodman's character. You're trying to figure everybody out. The one person who you sort of have the good feeling for
remains constant was Michelle.
Is Michelle, but let's talk about John Goodman.
Okay. Yes. Scary.
Scary.
Absolutely scary.
And you don't know when he's going to strike because he can be at any one moment. He's the John Goodman that we've all known and loved. Mm-hmm. Where he can be big, lovable fatherly.
Bear.
Yep. And
And then,
But there's
like,
something
on
off
a
about him.
switch of a dime, he could immediately turn on you.
Yeah.
Which was scary. And I think that also is a testament to the lighting of how they, and the cinematography, how they portrayed him as such a authoritative figure. The low angles on him made him seem more superior and more scary in that way.
Right. Yeah. No. Absolutely.
More intimidating.
And again, he, you know, it falls through one of the mysteries of the film. We know that he and Emmett worked together to put this compound, this bunker together. Emmett helped them out. Yet in the movie, Howard has nothing but he doesn't like Emmett too much. You get the sense, or at least I get the sense, he's not really liking Emmett too much.
He just deals with him.
He deals with him. He tolerates him. And again, I sort of kind of, you know, if we're going to break down this movie, Howard's character, what we learn about his character along the way, you know, he's not exactly truthful about certain things. He's a little bit, who builds a bunker? Like, who builds a bunker?
He spent years building bunkers for this exact situation.
But the question is, was it for this exact situation? Or was it to fulfill his sicko type of
personality?
Pedophilia kind of? Because we know that something not nice happened in that bunker prior to the events that take place in 10 Cloverfield Lane.
Yes.
We know something not so good happened that involved Howard with a young type girl.
Megan.
With Megan, who's supposed to be his daughter, but we find out that that's really not his daughter through the
photo.
Yeah. He tells our protagonist Michelle. He shows her a picture and goes, "Oh yeah, this is my daughter." And again, at that point, why would you disbelieve? But we find out that that picture was not exact. That wasn't his daughter. It was somebody else who had gone missing. Mm-hmm. And
I think that's what was also just the frustrating part of maybe just the storytelling is why set up a story when we still didn't get the clear answer at the end? I get it if you want to leave it ambiguous and leave it up to whatever theories, but I was just very upset that we didn't find out that answer because I was intrigued. Megan felt like a whole nother character that I was waiting to see.
Right.
I was like, okay, it's just 3 in the bunker, but maybe Megan will show up. She's somewhere else. And we don't know. And we never saw her, and we never really got a clear answer what exactly happened.
Great point. And I think, I wish the audience could chime in on
I
this.
actually thought Megan was going to show up.
Did you? See, that's fascinating because it was only after the movie that I started piecing certain things together. Okay. And all right, so let's look at Megan the photo, okay, who we learn is not Megan. Okay, it's a girl that Emmett knew. She went to high school with his daughter, and through Michelle, who had to go through the air ducts to turn on the air vent, and the only way to get there was through the air ducts.
Through the ducts. Ooh, scary.
And
never go into a more confined place.
She finds a bloodied earring, and she also sees like a little bit of a skylight that says "Help me" or "Help."
Scary.
Right. And you could tell it was scratched.
From the inside.
With this earring, okay. So, here's my theory. Here's the way I take all of this, okay? Howard, in the movie, he has a little... He has a pedophilia. He goes for young girls, okay? Mm-hmm. I believe he did have a wife and daughter, and I believe they left him because they thought he was cuckoo. Okay. Now, what's great about this movie is that he is offsetting, but there are some truths in what he's saying. We're attacked, but there are some things that he doesn't know that he takes to be true, like is the air contaminated? And there are some things that we know that he's completely lying about, and that is this girl is Megan. So I believe that this girl, who we know went missing, was never found. Mm-hmm. I believe that he did, in fact, abduct her, take her to this bunker. And
very much in the same vein as Michelle.
Yep.
Abducted her in a way. Yes.
Made photo Megan his daughter, Megan, in a sense. And when she either grew older or didn't want to play anymore,
she wanted to
tried to
escape.
escape.
And I think that what makes it, I'm going to say scary a lot because this was a scary thriller movie, but they did it well. I think what made it more frightening was that the fact that he was given the same clothes that this girl was wearing. Now give it to Michelle.
Right.
And I think it's interesting that Meg and Michelle, 2 M names. I'm scared for my life with Marisa here. But like the fact that he's given the same clothes that this girl used to own and wear, now give it to Michelle. Like, you're the next one I'm after.
Yeah.
And I think that might be just a testament to the trailer for this film. It's like monsters come in all different forms.
Oh, right.
And
yeah.
I think John Goodman's Howard was quite the monster himself.
Absolutely. And okay, so I want to follow timeline a little bit here, okay? So we already talked about how Emmett and Howard's relationship within the bunker is somewhat contentious. Like, Howard is not happy that Emmett is there. And we learned that his broken arm came because Emmett, more or less, even though he was a guy that helped Howard build this bunker,
he didn't want him there.
He fought to get in there, and Howard actually closed the door on his arm and broke the arm. And at that point, he either took sympathy for breaking his arm, he took him in. Now, when you're thinking of timelines, okay, let's start off. We go to the Kelvin gas station, okay? There's unease there. So Michelle goes off. Now, as she's going off, shit starts to go down. Like, things are happening fast and furious. We've got John Goodman's character, Howard, was obviously at the gas station. He was eyeing Michelle. Mm-hmm. He found something about her. They're driving. This is going down. She's on the road. He knocks her off the road. I think he purposely knocks her off the road. I don't think it was an accident. He takes her into the bunker. He puts her in the room. Okay? Now, the news of invasion or whatever it is starts to come out. He starts to, he's battening down the hatches. And as he's doing so, Emmett, who knows of this bunker, is like, holy shit, Howard was right. I've got to get to this bunker. And he's going, just as he's battening down, Howard sort of fights him, breaks his arm. He puts him in. Emmett does not get a room. Okay? He is in a supply room. Not even a closet. He's in the supply room.
He's in the pantry. So this is how I was piecing things together after I walked out of the movie. Emmett came into the bunker after Michelle.
I think I believe...
Even though they said that he's been there maybe like a day before.
Maybe it almost seems like it seems like he would have had... Emmett would have had knowledge of Michelle being there because... Howard would be checking up on her. He has her to IV. He obviously has meds.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking that, again, Howard's a liar. So I'm thinking that all of this sort of kind of went down at the same time that our characters learned, or at least Howard and Emmett learned, that there was an invasion going on. Okay? Not knowing what it was.
Yeah.
But this is the day they were prepared for. So however long that, I forget how long he may have said... and there's help. Yeah, that's great. Mm-hmm. I'm trying to think how long Michelle was out. She was out she was unconscious for a couple of days.
Yeah, I would say at least 2 days, because a lot can happen in 2 days.
Right, and she was in a leg brace.
Which was also handcuffed.
Right.
Which makes it even just creepy in a way. It's like, why would you handcuff her if you're already locking her up in a room?
Right. So, and I'm saying the other thing too is that I'm going off of is Howard wanted Michelle to himself. And I believe that's even, you can extrapolate, that's why he was upset that Emmett was there. Because he noticed
no
that
more
Emmett
privacy.
No more privacy. And if you notice, there were times like, don't you touch her.
Yeah.
Don't touch her. Like,
no touching.
That's basically setting boundaries, saying she's mine. I'm not gonna don't stop talking to her, don't flirt with her, you leave her alone. Mm-hmm. So, and then at the end, as we're getting towards the end, they have that other tense scene where he brings out the barrel of the hydrochloric acid. And
that was scary.
It's a creepy scene, right?
Yeah.
and Howard,
because it's literally it's a visual cue to show like, hey, this can literally kill all of us right now if we stick ourselves in it.
Right.
And you knew it was going to come into play. It was just scary that it was an interesting visual device. Like,
right.
Oh, hey, death is literally right in front of us.
And if you think about it, that is where the photo Megan could have ended up. Because it was all skin, bone,
and
flesh.
That's what I was thinking, because that's apparently how they get rid of waste. And I was like, if we never saw Megan's body, where did it go?
Where did it go?
Of course, they had to go into that fat. That's my theory.
That's what I think.
But again, we never got the clear-cut answer of what happened to Megan. So we're led to believe that that's probably what Howard did. Stuck her body in that vat.
It's one of those things I think you can make good, educated guesses like that one.
Yeah.
And okay, but there's a huge line of dialogue where Howard believes he's caught Emmett and Michelle in a plot. And Emmett sticks up, basically says, it's my fault, don't blame Michelle. It's my fault, I apologize. And we know that apologizing is a big thing for Howard.
Yes, but also I think this is where the sound design comes great into play, or lack thereof, because literally the sound goes out about 30 seconds before all that happened. It was like you knew something was going to come. It was like it was building up, and then when you take away sound, it makes the one sound, whatever sound it is, more scary. You knew there was going to be a gunshot.
Yeah.
Something was going to happen.
Yeah,
Boom.
and he apologized. Howard says, I accept. And he pulls out a gun and shoots him in the head.
Blows his head
Blows
off.
his away. Then he goes to Michelle, says some words, but the words that I clearly remember are, we are alone now. And I'm thinking, this is what he wanted. This is what he wanted from the beginning. This is why he broke Emmett's arm, who's fought. Again, if somebody helped you on a construction project or any project, why would you fight with that person? And he fought his way in there, breaking his arm.
Yeah.
That I found to be very telling.
I think it's unfortunate for Emmett, but again, Emmett was the weakest out of all of them, so it does make sense that Emmett would be the first one to go.
Yeah.
Because he was the most nurturing.
Right.
Anyway, sometimes, being the nicest person doesn't help you.
No. So what did you think of John? Let's talk about John Gallagher Jr. What did you think about Emmett? What did you think about John Gallagher Jr.?
I like John Gallagher Jr. I love him in the newsroom because, again, he's the nice one in the newsroom. He's the guy that everyone roots for him to get the girl, not the other a-hole. And then he was great in Short Term 12. With Brie Larson. I've mentioned that movie a few times.
You have?
Yeah, a few times. So I've always liked John Gallagher, and he's great in Spring Awakening as well. He's very talented, and I don't think this was like out of his acting range. I kind of wanted to see him maybe be the twist in the film because he was so good. And I know him from his other roles. Right. I just, I was like, okay, he's doing what he usually does. He's always the nice guy, which is totally fine. Yeah. But I don't think it was out of his acting wheelhouse. So I don't think it really challenged him, this role.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, for me, where John Gallagher Jr. is Emmett, where I thought it really worked because he had to do this fine line. Because on one hand, at the beginning, when we first are introduced to this character, and he talks about Howard, he's a Howard believer. He's like, Howard knew this was coming. He stuck up for Howard. Howard knew that this event was going to happen. That's why I helped him build this. That's why I'm here. He's right all along. He's not going to lie. But then Emmett's character, that truth starts to slowly get chipped away from Michelle's research and learning things about... we think that Emmett knows a lot about Howard and his family. But again, when Michelle shows the picture, she goes, this is his daughter. And she goes, that's not Megan. He goes, no. Megan's somebody. She goes, that's a girl that I went to high school with. And he starts to form he's like,
maybe I don't know him as well as I did.
Maybe I don't know Howard as well as I did. Yeah. And I like this because then that shift happens where,
now he's on Michelle's side.
And he's like, you know what? You could be right. We could be in a lot of trouble.
We could plot against him.
Yeah.
Which they were doing.
Yeah. And so I really liked the way that John Gallagher Jr. played that. And I believed him, and he became a very sympathetic character in doing so.
Yeah.
He was just the guy that you liked.
He was the nice one. And then I think he was the balance between John Goodman's scary character, Maria Winstead's, somewhat strong female contrast, and then like he was that happy medium.
Yeah, absolutely, and he was the kind of guy that could bring levity to the party, so to speak.
Always make jokes.
It was a great scene, and again, it was offsetting where he walked into the kitchen. This is during their plotting. And John Goodman was watching Pretty in Pink, a Paramount movie. He was watching Pretty in Pink, Molly Ringwald, the John Hughes written movie.
Which goes into the marketing.
Right. And he goes, "Oh, what are you watching there? 16 Candles?" Another John Hughes movie. He's like, no. And John Goodman was just so annoyed that this guy is talking to him while he's watching Pretty in Pink. It was like, no, it's Pretty in Pink. He's like,
which is scary because if you think of Pretty in Pink, that's a female-heavy movie. That's catered towards the young female. There's a young female protagonist in that film. And the fact that if this guy is as much as a creeper as he is and he likes young women, it makes sense he would be enjoying Pretty in Pink.
But it makes me feel weird for now even liking Pretty in Pink. Like, it sort of kind of.
But you're not a creeper.
But I understand that.
Hopefully you're not out to kill us and put us in liquid nitrogen.
Not yet.
Not yet. Oh, goodness.
But it's just, that made me feel like, can I not like Pretty in Pink anymore? Because this sort of kind of made it dirty. And it was, and the other thing that made playing charades was really a creepy scene as well. And again, the way that the charade part too was like, it was obviously Little Women was the thing. And
another
they were going little.
No, young woman.
But he couldn't say, but Howard, John Goodman as Howard, couldn't fathom the word woman. He was like little princess, little girl, little
whatever,
like lass, little, and time ran up, and they said it's woman, and he was like, yeah, you weren't clear enough on your older than it's Michelle. Michelle is a princess. Michelle. He used every word that would describe a little girl other than woman, and that was an intense yet another creepy thing about Howard.
Pedophile.
Yeah, it was really creepy. And but again, and this also chips away to Emmett's belief that like Howard is a little loopy. There's something quite wrong with him.
Oh yeah, he's not fully there.
And wasn't Goodman though fantastic at playing that? Like,
I think he did a fantastic job because I was still questioning his character if he was good or bad, because he started off scary and then we're like, oh, he has a nurturing paternal side. He could actually be good, and he seems sincere.
Right.
When he's like, no, this is a safe place. You can eat, you can sleep, whatever. This is a place of safety. And then he can switch back to the creepiness.
Right.
Be like, don't touch her, X, Y, and Z. I was like, I don't know if I should trust this guy. I was like, sleep with one eye open kind of mentality.
And it was interesting because I sort of swayed on believing him when he came true about, I caused your accident.
Yeah.
I caused your accident.
But he seemed sincere. Like he
sincere.
wanted to apologize.
Extremely sincere.
That he got generally distracted because of the world literally collapsing around him. It's like, I believed him.
Right.
But I'm still questioning the motive.
Right. And I found that to be really creepy too. And the other thing too is like, we knew that something was going on. And I think that if you're familiar with Cloverfield, I think this tie-in is, like, we know that Cloverfield is a monster movie, and if this is going to be in this universe, we know that something's going on, some semblance of an invasion. But one thing that wasn't introduced in the original Cloverfield movie was that the air around it was contaminated. And so with Howard telling them, you can't go outside, the air is contaminated, we could be down here for years, but we can't breathe that air. And again, as a viewer of the original Cloverfield, I was like, well, that's not entirely... Something's weird. But that first time that Michelle tries to escape, they did a very clever twist. and introducing the woman outside who was like melting.
Oh my goodness, she was scary.
She was scary. And I was like,
okay, shoot, Howard's actually telling the truth.
Yes. I was like, the air is contaminated.
Yes. This woman, it's like, so it makes me wonder what happened to her.
Yeah.
That if the air wasn't contaminated, that maybe this monster got her.
I thought she was going to do a Lizzie Kaplan from the original Cloverfield. I thought she would just like explode in the window, but she was literally like melting. And she was like, let me in. And when she turned on like, Michelle, let me in, you bitch. I was like, oh my God.
And I think that maybe that's just, there's so many freaking zombie movies out there where you think that when they're turning, like they become human, but then you see the moment where they like lose it mentally, they lose it physically. I was like, oh shoot, this is happening to her because she was getting ravaged.
Right.
And I was like, okay,
she was turning.
She was literally turning to the point where I thought she was going to be a zombie. I was like, oh crap, it's another zombie movie. Shoot. Y'all know my opinions on zombie movies, but I did like this twist of the woman because again, it added to, oh shoot, should we trust Howard or not?
Yes. That's where I was at. I was like, oh, that was a nice twist. Well played, folks. Like, that was really well done because maybe...
If she does go outside, how long would she live?
Yeah. I really thought that was... It was clever, and it plays into...
banging of the head. That was gruesome to watch.
And I love, again, I think the cleverness of the script, because that leads to our, one of the later plot point in which, hey... I'm going to design a hazmat suit. Yep. So I can go outside. We're going to devise a plot in which we can get outside. I will get outside, get help, see what's going on, because we believe the air is contaminated, right? Mm-hmm. I then find, again, we twist back when Howard only had part of the facts because the air really wasn't contaminated in a sense. And we find that out at a nice reveal. I really, again, this movie is a claustrophobic psychological thriller outside of it just being a quote-unquote like a kaiju or Godzilla monster movie. Yeah, I think it's very extremely clever. So I want to talk about Mary Elizabeth Winstead.
She's great. I think she's great in every single role that she's in. I hope she's in, just more better roles to come. Yeah. I really believed Michelle.
Me too.
In all the moments, because I felt that, I felt the whole thriller suspense storyline throughout her. So, she didn't know who to trust. Therefore, the audience didn't know who to trust. And, she was vulnerable and cool at some moments. Right. And then, the whole time I was always rooting for her. Because she was very observant of the environment around her. She used vents, she used ducts, she goes on, she's very resourceful. So I knew she was a smart, strong woman, and I knew, hopefully, being the female protagonist and whatnot, or just the protagonist in the film, I was always rooting for her and hoping that she had a better outcome in the end. Right,
yeah, no, and I couldn't agree with you more. That I was always wondering, as the movie was going along, something in the back of my head was, are they going to take the Cloverfield route in which basically, all of the main characters in Cloverfield are dead by the end of the movie. Some die right at the end of the movie. And I was wondering if they were going to stick to that formula in which our characters die, which would have been depressing, I think.
That would have sucked.
And I, as far as Mary Elizabeth Winstead goes, I said it at the top, she does remind me of Sigourney Weaver and how Sigourney Weaver approaches these genre things. One of the things that I love about her is that she does not shy away from genre. I think that's fantastic. She does these different movies within genre, whether it's science fiction or horror,
action,
edgy action, like comedy, like Scott Pilgrim Saves the World,
and Sky High.
Sky High, yeah, exactly. And I appreciate that. And in some cases, I wonder if maybe critics might not take her so seriously because she's in genre kind of movies. But I say shame on the Academy or people for not, because I think this is where she excels.
Give her better roles.
And they can be better roles.
Not that these weren't great roles, but give her more roles, more so.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, she elevates the genre. That should be noted. Now, when I'm looking at things like she was in Final Destination 3.
Yeah, she was.
She was, yep. And she's the protagonist in
I'm pretty
that
sure
movie.
she dies in that
Yeah,
one.
and she's,
Spoiler alert.
great. But she was actually, I really, again, I guess I recognized her or paid attention, Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, where to me she was the highlight of that movie. I really felt that. I felt that movie was sort of okay.
I
Stuck out.
loved that film.
Did you?
I loved
to me,
that
she
film.
stuck out. I thought she was fantastic. And I was a really big fan of The Thing, which is a sequel, not a sequel. It's more of a prequel to the John Carpenter's Thing.
The Thing.
And it was like this movie rested on her shoulders as an action horror film, and I thought she did a great job. I know Dan Trachtenberg noticed her in this little indie film, which I believe her now husband directed or starred in, a movie called Smashed, which was about alcoholism. And he said he noticed her from a monologue that she gave, which I believe was in AA. I saw this movie was on one of the HBO's or Cinemax. She does a very good job. Not a happy-go-lucky movie at all. It really treats alcoholism in a realistic sense, but she was fantastic. And I just find it ironic. That was the movie, a little scene indie film about alcoholism. That was the movie that Dan Trachtenberg said, I want her. And they had no other. This is who she wanted. This is who he wanted in the film, which I thought was fantastic. So again, I really think that she makes this work.
I really believed her character evolution in this film, going from scared person to running away to someone who's like literally running towards the monster in the end. So like her character actually probably had the most growth, and I liked how the final scene when she's actually fighting the spoiler alert, the alien, but she actually had the flu during the whole sequence. So it made sense that like she was, weary and physically fatigued, and it just actually happened she had the flu.
It's an interesting choice.
More
too.
believable and authentic.
Absolutely, but it's an interesting choice too. It's like, do I fight this alien monster? I have no idea how to do this, or do I go back and fight this monster that could potentially be alive and still wreak havoc on my life? And and the fighting the alien was the clearer choice. Oh, this is, I gotta get the F out of here, and I'd rather fight this.
I actually enjoyed it, as ridiculous as this 5 to 10 minute sequence was, because again I rooted for her. I was like, yeah, you killed the alien. I thought how it was edited and how it played out, it was just so like, okay, what is going on? Because you see her, she's in the car, she, again, resourceful. She takes the flame and the lighter and be like, hey, I can throw this into the mouth and blow it up from the inside. Very smart woman. But her reaction at the end of it, she was like, what?
What?
And I had the exact same reaction. I'm like, what the F just happened? And I feel like something as traumatic as that would be actually in real life, you would have a bit of a bigger reaction. And she was just like, so just not knowing what the heck happened.
Yeah, and it's
I felt like it
funny,
should have been bigger.
too, that she yeah, again, another little funny thing for those people who drink scotch. The scotch bottle, I believe, was either called Glenovulin or Macavulin, which is there's a Macallan, and there is actually a Lagavulin scotch. So they sort of combine the words to come up with this scotch, and she makes a huge Molotov cocktail.
Pretty much.
And escaping this, and then we have bunkers exploding. I found, okay, here's my take on the aliens. To me,
Alien.
or the alien, the
Just
alien.
one.
To me, this is our subtle connection to Cloverfield. Like, this is set within the Cloverfield universe, okay? That's been established through the director, through J.J. Abrams. They wanted to make a thread. And to me, this is because we know that Cloverfield is a monster invasion movie. And so if it's going to happen countrywide or maybe even worldwide, there had to be some semblance of an alien in there to sort of kind of connect it to what we've seen previously that happened in New York. So to me, it didn't bother me because I know that this is in the Cloverfield universe. And I just found, to me, that was the connection. The connection was, okay, we have alien invasion, or we have an alien invasion on the East Coast. We have an alien invasion here in New Orleans. That, to me, you needed that. That's the thin thread of connection. They're completely two different movies.
Yeah.
Obviously. But that's what I liked about it, because it was sort of... it's sort of like a Twilight Zone episode, like a very well-written Twilight Zone, right? I totally
felt Twilight Zone, and which I loved. And that's a great show, too. I felt, and I said it at the beginning of this dissection, that, like, I went into this film knowing that there was going to be a twist ending, and this was it. Because you take literally the last 10 minutes of this film, it's completely... really unrelated to really what happened in the bunker.
Right.
It was essentially just a whole nother story that they're like, oh, let's tack this on at the end.
Right.
Which was fun. It was fun and weird to watch and make sense of, like, oh, that's happened in Cloverfield. It's happening now. It's a residual thing. Fun to watch, interesting to talk about, interesting to, like, just even think about.
Yeah, really. and I want to put this out there too, and folks, for those who really, really, really pay attention to detail about this sort of thing. Now, if my memory serves, and I watched Cloverfield within the past month, if memory serves, the events take place when the monster comes up in Cloverfield. We see that it's about, I believe, May 22nd. When this happens, which happens to be my birthday, and our other wonderful co-host who's not here today. She was supposed to, Sarah Stratton, folks, was supposed to be with us today, but she got abducted by aliens.
She did.
And that's also her birthday as well. So that's why.
Fortunately, she didn't self-explode yet.
Not yet. Not that we're aware of. We have to wait until next week.
We'll check up on her afterwards.
So. But that's why that date stuck to me. Stuck in my head as May 22nd. And somewhere I saw a date somewhere in 10 Cloverfield Lane that said August or something. So I'm thinking we got about a 3-month time span. And then as she's driving away from the house, from the destruction, from the bedlam and chaos, she turns the radio on, and we hear something to the effect of the eastern seaboard has been cleared. And that, at least to me, harkened to, they took care of the New York situation, which was the Cloverfield project, which basically meant that they were going to just nuke Manhattan.
Bomb the crap out of it.
So, but they suppressed the East Coast invasion, we hear. So that to me was a thin thread tie, which puts 10 Cloverfield Lane into the Cloverfield universe. The other nice twist is when she's driving off, she knocks off the mailbox, and
10 Cloverfield
Lane is the address on the mailbox. So I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, and I liked how, if you think about it, the first noise and dialogue you hear is from a cell phone. Again, technology.
Right.
And the last dialogue you hear is from a radio. Again, technology. Right. So it was a nice bookend to the kind of world she's still living in.
Yeah, and we'll talk. And I want to talk about this ending, the movie ending. She had a choice. She could go to, I believe it was Houston, Texas,
or Baton Rouge.
Baton Rouge, which had been, I believe, cleared, but they needed hospital type help.
They needed help.
Houston, Texas needed like army kind of help, if I'm correct. And she chose to go to Baton Rouge. Like she was at a crossroads in life, and this is where she chose to go, to Baton Rouge.
To go help others.
And the car goes off, and I like that ending. So, which leads me to, I think, one of our major discussions, which it was very rare that we're able to do. But folks, if you go onto a website called thefilmstage.com, and we have it here in our notes as well, filmstage.com, they did something pretty cool, and that is they broke down the original script called The Cellar, And they made comparisons to what was The Cellar and what ended up being 10 Cloverfield Lane. So I want to dive into some of the differences, because some of them in The Cellar I liked, but ultimately...
and things always change from script to screen.
And major. So let's start off with character-wise, right? So Michelle, portrayed by Mary Elizabeth Winstead. Okay. In The Cellar, the original script, Michelle is an 18-year-old college student with no defined major who drives drunk after a fight with her boyfriend at a party. Okay. Completely different.
Could it be the party that they were at in the first film?
No, because that took place in New York.
Well, she was driving for who knows how long.
I don't know how close New York and New Orleans are, but I see
But
where
also,
you're
it's
going.
like maybe where she was driving and she had the car accident and she's been passed out for a few days, that who knows if Howard actually drove from that middle point to New Orleans in the time that we didn't see.
That's true. Interesting. But, she was
Just saying.
18. Yep, it could be. And let's talk a little bit about Howard. So what's very interesting is, what's similar is Howard, both Cellar version, movie version. So it's The Cellar, 10 Cloverfield Lane. They're similar in the ways of how they're protective of Michelle. They're similar men in general, but movie Howard is much more he's much more prone to outbursts of violence, much more protective. The original script, it said that Howard is more awkward and impotent than movie Howard. Now and
that would make sense for his pedophilia.
Right. So the backstory, though, this is where things get interesting. In the script for The Cellar, Howard is a recovering alcoholic, which obviously isn't the case in the movie 10 Cloverfield Lane, because he makes moonshine. Okay? He drinks his own moonshine. Okay? So the movie Howard claims to have had a daughter and indeed cannot stop talking about her, reminiscing. In the original script, Howard mentions his wife and daughter, but they are more subtextual than necessary to the plot. In the movie, Howard's daughter is moved to Chicago, where the original script took place, by the way. Okay? Instead of New Orleans, while The Cellar, she has moved to D.C. Okay? Now, the full story and reality of what happened to Howard's family is altered even further. We'll talk about... in the film, Howard shows a photo, which we talked about, which he claims is a daughter, which we come to find is false. Okay? It is implied the girl was killed by Howard when she tried to escape. In The Cellar, Michelle is told Howard killed his wife and never had a daughter. Okay? In time, she discovers, however, that Howard actually killed his wife while driving drunk and lost custody of his daughter thereafter. There is no kidnapping or murder of another girl. In both instances, Michelle obtains false information and is corrected, but in the film, she is aided in discovering the truth by the third shelter dweller, which brings us to what we know as Emmett. In The Cellar, this third dweller, his name is Nate. Okay? So the script The Cellar had this third person. Now, this I find fantastic. This is crazy. The script had this man called Nate, and he comes with a lot of baggage, it goes on to say. He arrives in the shelter, or at the shelter, in another man's fire department issue hazmat suit, suspiciously, and is immediately confrontational with Howard. We go on to learn that their relationship is not friendly. Nate claimed that Howard owes him money, and he immediately begins flirting with Michelle. Okay, and right here too, this is unlike in the film. Howard has no outburst quelling their, Howard has no outburst quelling their flirtation, and Nick quickly swings Michelle onto his side. In a coup against Howard, Michelle drugs Howard, and Nate takes Howard's gun, and the two have a weird, possibly transactional sex scene just before they kiss. It is said that Michelle reads between the lines of Nate saying that they will take care of one another. So this is completely different.
That's mind-blowing. I think I like how different
Absolutely.
they made the change for the screen.
Oh my God.
Because if we had such a confrontational Nate against Howard, it'd make the audience realize, like, who's the real antagonist? Who's the one should we not trust? If we have two males that are seemingly like the alpha males,
Right.
like, we don't know who's actually more worse.
Right.
So I like how they made one person the antagonist, one person the protagonist, and one person in the
There's
middle.
another twist that happens in The Cellar that didn't make it onto screen, and this I find fascinating, is that in the climax, Howard confronts Michelle about the truth of his life, and Nate's lies are laid bare. It turns out that Nate testified against Howard in the custody case for his daughter, and he lied saying Howard would beat her as a payback for the money he believed he was owed.
So Nate was a part of that
So
whole
Nate
custody battle.
He played an integral role, and he lied. So there's contentious.
So there's already like personal connections.
But think about what
that.
this does, though. It takes, and this is where I find that the refining in making 10 Cloverfield Lane, it sort of kind of takes the attention away from Michelle, and she becomes not the strong character.
And it doesn't really tie to the end either. And that doesn't tie in, because like if it doesn't tie to the end, which ties to the original, I mean, it just seems so much about the characters and not the story.
Right. Yeah, and I like actually how they changed Michelle. I mean, Michelle in this became a pawn, and in some ways almost a sexual pawn, for doing things to help Nate, and it was transactional. As was said, and Michelle now becomes the protagonist, and she's a much stronger woman. And I just find that it's extremely interesting as to, I just love how you can work on a script, you can away at it,
change characters for the better part of just storytelling.
And personally, I think it's what we see, I think, is much better. Now, the other thing that's very contested is the ending. You had an issue with the end, you were saying, to an extent.
Oh, well, I think we know this is tied to Cloverfield, but I say that the whole third, like 75% of the film, if you just take that, ignore the part where she actually physically leaves the bunker.
Right.
Just take from the beginning to the whole bunker time of the film. It's like, that was a great psychological thriller movie.
Absolutely.
In and of itself. I mean, we saw like character changes from the antagonist, character changes from like the protagonist.
Right.
And we even see like an attacking scene where she's in the ducks and Howard attacks her. Right. Which that's scary. That became like a slasher film in and of itself.
Absolutely.
And then when she actually physically escapes the bunker, it became a whole nother movie.
Right.
And this is where I got confused as an audience watcher. I'm like, what kind of genre or what kind of audience are you really trying to get to? The sci-fi people who would love the alien aspect, or the thriller, suspense, horror for those who loved that kind of mystery movies?
We're going to talk about audience reaction to this just after we talk about...
It felt like two different movies.
And are you aware of the original ending and how it was written? And then changed?
Not exactly how it was written.
We know the movie version. So in the original script, Michelle escapes from the shelter. She's chased through the farmhouse by Howard, who still wants to protect her. Pardon me. She blinds him with bathroom cleaner. He tells her about his tragic life: dead wife, missing daughter, treacherous Nate, etc. He then she shoots. She basically kneecaps him. She shoots him in the kneecap and runs away. He ends the movie alive and treating Michelle to be careful.
No.
He obviously can't wait. So later, after traveling down empty roads and finding no one around to help her, she crests a hill and sees the Chicago skyline, smoldering and destroyed. No explanation given. We don't even know what she'll do next, only that she now knows that Howard, for all of his oddity, was correct. The final line in the script is, slowly she pulls down the mask on the hazmat hazmat suit before taking a deep breath.
Realizing that the air is clean?
No, she puts the hazmat suit on.
Oh.
She realizes that Howard was correct, She pulls down the mask on the hazmat suit before taking a breath. And then it goes to
See,
black.
I don't like that. I like how they actually showed it on the screen.
I do
because
too.
it showed that now that when she actually left the bunker, and it showed that Howard is no longer the threat anymore. It's this outside creature that we still don't see off screen, and I love the sound design as well. Because that played it up to, there's even a bigger problem than what Howard was that she
Yes.
now has to face. It's like she was afraid of a man, but like, how more afraid will she be of this unseeming creature that we don't even know yet?
Yeah. Either way.
And I think that played up to just like the emotional storytelling aspect.
Yeah, and I think for the ending of The Cellar, it appears as if they kept the mystery of invasion or something going on towards the very, very end, where this movie, they let the cat out of the bag about 3/4 of the way, a little over the 3/4 of the way mark of the movie, in which, the air seems to be fine. There was an invasion. It was an alien invasion. And again, I just go back to, this is what all ties it into the Cloverfield universe, that there's this invasion. Howard himself is a character who, interestingly enough, a little Easter egg coming up, interestingly, as a character, had partial facts.
Yeah.
Yes, we were invaded. The air was fine. We don't know what did the invasion, but it is interesting to know that Howard worked for a particular satellite company.
Yeah. Oh, goodness. I'm going to like completely butcher this name, and I apologize. Shoot.
Tagaratu.
Oh my goodness, I'm sorry. Tagaratu Japanese company. That's the company that produced the Slush Show.
Slush Show.
That was part of Cloverfield.
Yeah,
the first one.
Cloverfield, our main protagonist in
Who was like
Cloverfield.
most likely responsible for releasing the monsters in, in New York City.
And it's interesting because you mentioned Slush Show. So the main protagonist in Cloverfield, part of the thing is that he got a job for that company and he's moving to Japan. So Cloverfield more or less starts off with a going away party for this character who's moving to Japan to go work for this company. We learn that Howard
was actually an employee.
He was an employee of them.
He had the Employee of the Month.
Yeah, Employee of the Month.
And I think this takes us into the marketing.
To marketing, right.
The Employee of the Month, it's on the Tagaratu website, updated to February 2016. So already putting a timestamp on just this movie in general, which the Employee of the Month, and his profile says design, manufacture, and integration of advanced technology products for the military, arms manufacture, and space exploration organizations.
Right.
So it tells the audience that Howard, one, worked for this company, knows technology, knows space. Hello,
Right.
aliens, and then arms manufacturer, so he knows weaponry.
Right.
Where that comes
And he
with
was a
that.
military man too. If I
Yeah,
think he remember,
which
he
comes in
recalls.
with that liquid vat filled with whatever chemical that was. But there was actually something I read on Reddit. Someone, a brilliant person, said 10 Cloverfield Lane, if you break it down, if you abbreviate lane, it becomes LN.
Right.
And 10 in the binary code is actually 2 in the Deca system. This is a brilliant mind on Reddit, you guys. So the title would read Cloverfield LN2, which actually equals to liquid nitrogen, which would be in the vat that Howard had and he showed to Michelle and Emmett. The vat that had that disintegrates everything. So people are, based off of that, people are making the theory that liquid nitrogen, whatever,
But doesn't
would
liquid
be
nitrogen
able.
freeze people like in Terminator 2? Wasn't that liquid nitrogen? I don't know. Interesting.
I don't know. I should ask my dad because he ran a power plant. I kid you not. Yeah, I should ask
Can
him.
we get him on the phone?
I could call him. But because he worked for a chemical plant. People are making, based off that, people are making the theory that whatever chemical property would be able to kill the monster.
Interesting. That's
I was
fascinating.
like, oh yeah. So maybe take that outside and just splash
Bigger
it on
nerd
the
than
men's
us thinking out that, like,
Yeah.
chemical
I
equation.
was like, oh shoot.
So, well, but what's interesting is at the end of Cloverfield, the movie, and again, for you people who've watched it, you know this Easter egg already. If you don't, it's a cool thing. There's a final like shot of our protagonist and his girl. They were having a very nice day in Coney Island, and I believe they were on a train. And in the background, you can see something literally falling from the sky, splashing down into the ocean. And this, in theory, is a satellite that fell. And this awakened the terror from the deep, which attacked Manhattan.
Yeah.
And another correlation is that John Goodman's character of Howard may have worked on that particular satellite, which fell from the sky and started this whole universe to begin with. Maybe.
Wow. So maybe he felt remorse in that way. Be like,
I don't know.
I'm sorry, I'm gonna hide out in this bunker.
Nah, I think he was a wacko.
Yeah.
I think he was wacko.
Mentally, he wasn't there
I think
too.
he wasn't there. So.
And then also there's another website that I'm trying to remember the exact name, but again, because this film had viral marketing,
Right.
which was fantastic. If you do the research, it's awesome. But there's this particular website. I'm trying to find the name in my notes. Sorry, guys.
Was it like Cloververse?
Cloververse, yeah.
Clover,
Cloververse.com. If you go there, it redirects you to a Pretty Things website.
Right.
And it's just a bunch of photos of pretty little objects and whatnot. But only one of the photos is clickable. And it's the Pretty in Pink screen cap
Of course.
of Molly Ringwald. And if you click on that, it takes you to this like live chat message type of that Howard was sending to his daughter Megan at the time. Because again, we know that the mother didn't approve of the father and the father-daughter relationship. So he set up this website as a secret communication to Megan.
Right.
And if you try to type into the source code and whatnot, and the cheat by viewing the source code, there's a warning message saying you do not belong here. Megan would never come here. And like, I looked this up. It's actually really creepy. And also it says, I know who you are and I will be tracking you. And one of the photos is actually
Great.
Eiffel Tower.
Really?
And if you notice, Eiffel Tower is like all over the place in the movie.
Sure.
It's on the shirts, it's
Yep.
in photos, and it's in a puzzle. It's everywhere in
Yep.
the movie. So there's a lot of connection to the Eiffel Tower.
Yeah.
And there's one point where if you start typing like a message to Howard, quote unquote, and there's the question like, are you Megan? You type yes, and then it opens up like another pop chat, and he asked the questions like, what did I send you for, like, what did I give you as a 13th birthday present? And the internet still doesn't know at this point that secondary answer, so we still don't know what the second more message is.
Great.
But thanks to everyone like in the world trying to figure this out. It's awesome.
Yeah, it's a very clever campaign.
Very.
You
I mean,
folks
I
too-
looked it up, and it's just creepy,
Yeah.
but cool if you're a part of it.
Yeah.
But it felt like I was talking to Howard.
Very interactive.
Very interactive.
Cool. It goes deeper than... it sort of kind of reminds me of what A24 did with Ex Machina, where you actually could have gone online and talked to a sentient artificial intelligence and you didn't realize what you were... Yeah, so very, very clever. So, yeah, the marketing on this movie, again, very, very, very secretive to a point where the cast weren't even
Didn't even
aware
really
that they were
know.
part of making a movie in the Cloverfield universe. A trailer didn't come out until January for a movie that was going to open up in early March. So that's fascinating because when you think about a lot of your tentpole movies, okay, like for example, Batman vs Superman is coming out next week, I believe. They started throwing teaser trailers out. It seems like over a year ago.
And then, and that has like big budget.
Absolutely.
And there's commercials involved with Gotham City, planes, airlines
Absolutely.
involved. You know,
Think
they
about-
had the money too.
Yeah, and think about like your Marvel, your Disney Marvel universe when they first put out a teaser trailer, or Star Wars for that matter. Sometimes a year prior to, they're still making the movie.
Yep.
This movie, literally January, I believe it was 13 Days, which was the Michael Bay Paramount movie. And, you know, people were like, 10 Cloverfield Lane, what? Is there's a sequel or what is this? And, you know, very clever. The viral marketing was great. They had a Super Bowl spot and one other trailer, I believe, prior to the release of this film. They really built up a good groundswell. And it helps, I think it really, really helps when on Rotten Tomatoes, your critics gives this movie a 91%.
Yeah,
which
I mean,
is
that's
really solid.
very high.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure. Thus far, Zootopia is winning the Rotten Tomatoes
Zootopia
thing
was
at
fantastic.
99%. But this is in the 90s, okay? And it's a sequel, or it's in the
it's-
universe.
yeah.
So, but I want to get to.
companion.
I want to talk about gross, but then I want to talk about the dichotomy between critics and audiences. Because there is a schism there. So we know that it came in number 2 this past weekend. 3,391 locations, about 25 million. It did $24.7 million. Not
good.
too shabby.
Made its money back.
Yeah, not too shabby for a movie that people were really
But hardly any marketing or
Yeah.
like any promotion
people
in a way
knew it was
for.
coming out.
Yeah.
You know, thus far we're looking at so far it's made about 31, almost $32 million. Foreign, it had a $2 million dollar opening. So all in, we're looking at worldwide, we're looking at $33 million plus dollars.
Pretty
in the
good.
bank. Not too shabby. Not
Yeah.
too shabby at all for Paramount. And you know, it'll continue to do well. I think, however, as I brought up, 91% on Rotten Tomatoes. Cinema Score, audiences give it a B minus. On Cinema Score, a B minus may be great on your math test,
I'd give
but
it
a B minus on Cinema Score means your word of mouth is going to be meh and may not lead to longer legs at the box office.
I would say like B plus in my eyes because I you know I already said it and I don't want to keep repeating myself, but like the first 75% of the movie as a whole, that was great. And then the last 10 minutes, you're like, it seems completely disconnected to the first half. So it's like, that's where it lost me as an audience viewer. So yeah, that's where like my score would drop.
Interesting.
Just because of the drastic change that it was.
Right. And for you folks who are watching, are you in the B minus category? Did maybe we change your mind after you
I wouldn't say
tuned
minus, I'd
in?
say plus.
Like, did you think, like, now that you know what you know from us, and whatever you bring to the movie, did you think it was a B minus? Did you think it was an A? For me, this movie falls into like A minus category. I've been trying to put together. I try to do something my favorite movie of the month, and right now Cloverfield comes to me. Anyways, we still have a couple of other movies to watch. But Zootopia is my favorite, but Cloverfield is like a very close number 2. I was very pleasantly surprised to me as to how good Cloverfield was because it wasn't a rehash. It didn't feel like a money grab. They actually spent time on, as we've proven, to make a good story and whittle things down from the original script.
And I liked
that.
how it originally didn't even start off in the Cloververse. Like, they
Right.
just wanted an interesting story.
Right.
And then they tied it. So,
Yeah.
like, originally they didn't even go, but it's like, hey, this is obviously a sequel. We're going to make it like that.
Yeah.
Like, no, it's just something that was so relatable
Right.
and could correlate with Cloverfield that I'm like, yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, and I believe, too, it was J.J.
that's where I
Abrams'
applaud them.
idea to call this. Like, how do we tie this into Cloverfield? Like, in the movie Cloverfield, I believe it was like the Cloverfield Project, which meant the nuking of Manhattan. I believe. Somebody can check me on that. But in this one, he said, well, they were going back and forth. Like, what are we going to call this movie? Do we call it The Basement, The Cellar? How do we tie this into Cloverfield? And I believe it was J.J. Abrams who said, we'll make it the address, 10 Cloverfield Lane. That is very, and again, I find that to be very clever. Legacy, will there be a sequel?
Probably.
Yeah, or a sequel, or at least another anthology story.
Yeah, I think there will be, only because of how it ended. That we know that there are more survivors. We know that Michelle had a happy ending, and she's going to be with more people who've also been affected by this. So it's more so like, why build up the knowledge that there's another population out there dealing with the same issue? So yes,
yeah. Well,
I'm gonna say yes. Probably in the next 8 years, we might find another movie.
Well, JJ has come out and said, basically, if they allow us to make more, we have more stories that we can set within the Cloverfield universe. So that's encouraging to me. Maria Elizabeth Winstead has said that currently she has no plans. She hasn't been asked. But if something were to continue her character, she said she would be on board, which would be great. So that I think is the legacy. I do believe that we're going to get some type of a Cloverfield movie, which will be different from Cloverfield and 10 Cloverfield Lane again. So it's weird. It's sort of kind of an anthology series.
It could be,
not a sequel, just telling us different stories during
parallel,
this time. Yeah,
kind of like a parallel story.
I like that. So, well, I think I can't think of anything we didn't unturn. We've lifted up the welcome mat, and
we unlocked this double door system of this movie.
I think so. So why don't we? So parting thoughts. Marisa, you like this movie?
I like this movie. I'm going to go back and rewatch Cloverfield because, now knowing the second story and like just how it kind of ties together, definitely got to watch that. I liked it as a thriller movie. I think it was very well done. The production value was certainly there, and the characters were interesting. As crazy as they were interesting to follow.
Right. Yeah.
And if there are more Cloverfield movies, I will watch them.
Yeah, and you bring up a good point. Like, this is a science fiction psychological thriller. Let us know, too. Maybe you didn't see the original Cloverfield. Did that impact whether you liked or disliked 10 Cloverfield Lane, if you saw it without having prior knowledge? I give this movie, I think this movie is an A minus A. I really like this. Strong on performance. It kept me guessing, which is so rare in a sequel. And it kept me riveted to my seat. Never overstayed its welcome. Fine scripting, fine direction, and very good performances all around. I will go see a sequel. I can't recommend 10 Cloverfield Lane enough for you science fiction fans out there. So there you have it. So stay tuned to Anatomy of a Movie on the Popcorn Talk Network, where, as I said at top, we talk movies 24/7. We have the DC Universe news, Disney movie news, Marvel, Jedi Alliance, the Schmoes. We have Meet the Movie Press. So many shows that are geared to movies. If you're a movie fan like we are, tune in. Thank you always for tuning into Anatomy of a Movie. We really do appreciate your comments. We were talking just before we started the show. Somebody last week commented when we did Zootopia about how they love the opening of the show.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks for paying attention.
Yeah.
And thank you for following again. If you want to support me on Twitter, that's at DMovies1701, at DMovies1701. Marisa?
You can follow me on Twitter at Serafini TV.
Okay, folks. Well, thank you again for joining us and giving your time. It means so much to us. We hope you had fun. Keep going to the movies. Keep talking about the movies.
And so will we.
We will too. So long, folks.
Producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the rest of the Anatomy of a Movie staff. We would like to thank you for listening and subscribing to the show. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to email or tweet us. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been Anatomy of a Movie.